This is my way of understanding the Baha'i faith. The time has come when every individual can search for and understand the way to God and has no need to be told. We are going to study some concepts, and some of them are very deep. So, welcome to this journey with me. Humanity started as individuals, then formed families and small groups, then progressed to villages and tribes, then became bigger and created regions, and eventually countries were formed. It is only natural and organic to have a united world as the next step of humanity. The question is how we achieve it, and this is where the Baha'i faith becomes very relevant. Baha'u'llah portrays a clear and viable path to reach this goal, which is in harmony with human nature. He offers a practical yet very spiritual way for humanity to come together and build a great civilization based on love and compassion, so we all look at each other as equals, which is the foundation of the unity of mankind. Baha'u'llah states, "The tabernacle of unity hath been raised, regard ye not one another as strangers. Ye are the fruits of one tree and the leaves of one branch." Everything has an organic way of progressing. A river flowing out of a mountain will find its way to the sea. It will change its path based on what is on the way. Just like the river, instead of changing the course with a lot of commotions and destruction on the way, Baha'u'llah paves and indicates the best and easiest way to reach the unification of mankind. He also tells us that we can reach that goal with tremendous loss should we ignore his guidance. This changes the concept that the end justifies the means, as the means and the way we reach the end become more important. The essence of religion is about our souls, and like the other religions, Baha'u'llah's writings are more spiritual, to prepare our souls for their eternal lives beyond this earthly existence. Baha'u'llah has over 100 volumes of books and tablets, and because it is more recent, they are either written by him or by his secretaries and approved by him. He has revealed an ocean of teachings to guide us in this world and prepare us for the next world. We also have the writings of the Bab, his forerunner, Abdul Baha, his son and his successor, and Shoghi Effendi, the successor of Abdul Baha and the guardian of the Baha'i faith. Let's look at a very brief history of the Baha'i faith. There was a time around 1844 when many religions were expecting the Messiah to come. The Zoroastrians were waiting for Shah Bahram V. The Buddhists were waiting for the ninth Buddha. The Christians were expecting Jesus to return. And the Muslims were waiting for the Mahdi or Qaim. So many people around the world were waiting for the promised one to come. Amongst all the religions, Shia Muslims had the clearest signs for the Messiah. In the evening of May 22nd, 1844, in Shiraz, Iran, a young merchant, 25 years of age, Sayyid Ali Muhammad, declared to a scholar named Mullah Hussein, who was in search of the Qur'an, that he was the promised one of all ages, and that he was on a mission to lay the foundation of the unity of mankind and to prepare the people for the greatest dispensation of him whom God shall make manifest. In fact, he chose the title of the Bab, which means the gate, to direct people to the greatest revelation of all times. Before we continue with the history, let me mention that the first telegraph was sent on May 24, 1844, from Washington to Baltimore. This was the first electronic way of communication. Since then, all means of communication and traveling have come into existence to make unity of mankind possible. Interestingly enough, it was a verse from the Bible which said, "What hath God wrought?" which in simple English means, "What has God done or made?" The Bab and his followers endured a great deal of persecution, and finally he was executed in Tabriz, northwest of Iran, on July 28, 1850. His remains were eventually transferred to Haifa after 50 years and buried on Mount Carmel under the beautiful Golden Dome. Some 20,000 of his followers were martyred, and so many more were severely persecuted. The history of the Bab is so magnificent and amazing. Many people like myself have been fascinated by his life and his ministry. The heroic acts of the Babis add to this period of the history of world religions. The Bab mentions 2 dates for him whom God shall make manifest. One was 9 years and the other one was 19 years. Mirza Hussein Ali, later assuming the title Baha'u'llah, a respected nobleman born in 1817 in Tehran, was a follower of the Bab at the time. A couple of Babis tried to get revenge on the king of Iran, Nasser al-Din Shah. As a result, a lot of the Babis were arrested and killed. Baha'u'llah was also arrested and was imprisoned in a horrible dungeon in Tehran called the Siyat Shah. There, in 1852 to 1853, he declared to his fellow Babis in prison that he was the one whom the Bab had foretold. It was 9 years after the Bab's declaration, as he had mentioned in his writings. Baha'u'llah was later released and was exiled to Baghdad, where in 1863 he announced his mission publicly, as foretold by the Bab, 19 years after the Bab's declaration. He was exiled to Constantinople, Adrianople, and finally was sent to Akko, the worst prison in the Ottoman Empire, to make sure his faith died down. However, his faith grew rapidly and reached many corners of the earth, and now is the second most widespread religion in the world. He passed in 1892, and he had revealed much of his work during these years. Let's look at some of the concepts of existence. According to the Baha'i faith, God is one, eternal, unknowable, and transcendent. In the Baha'i view, creation does not have an absolute beginning in the sense that there was once a time when God had created nothing and then suddenly created the universe. Baha'u'llah teaches that God has always existed, and creation has always existed in some form. This is expressed particularly clearly in the Kitabi Khan. God hath existed from eternity, and his creation hath existed from eternity. The Baha'i teachings distinguish between God, who is eternal and independent, and creation, which is dependent upon God. Creation is therefore eternal in the sense of having no absolute beginning, but it is not independent or equal to God. The problem arises when we treat God as if he is one of us, therefore, we try to understand God by our concepts. Many years ago, I read Abdul Baha's writing that stated that whatever we imagine of God, it is our imagination and has nothing to do with God's essence. That helped me tremendously not to look at God as a human, no matter how high I imagine him. Abdul Baha states, in order to understand something, we must bring it down to the level of our own understanding. So, since God is not at our level, then he is beyond our understanding. Then where does that take us? It is human nature to try to connect to our Creator. As Rumi says in one of his masterpieces, listen to the reed, how it tells its tale, complaining of separations. Ever since they cut me from the reed bed, men and women have lamented my cry. I seek a heart torn apart by separation, so that I may tell the story of longing. Whoever is far from his source longs for the return of the time of union. Humans started to search for God around him, perhaps in simple ways like stones or the sun, and made idols. This search became deeper and more advanced. The Baha'i faith takes us away from these images and imaginations and directs us to a more clear path and much stronger understanding of this relationship. Baha'u'llah says that God has created us out of love. This is amazing, as on one side we have God with unlimited love, and on the other side it is us with our earthly limitations. So Baha'u'llah has come to strengthen this love from our side and give us a clearer understanding of this relationship, which also is called the path to the Creator. As I mentioned, most of Baha'u'llah's writings are spiritual and love letters. This is where it becomes even more interesting. Baha'u'llah states, behold how the manifold grace of God, which is being showered from the clouds of divine glory, hath, in this day, encompassed the world. For whereas in days past every lover besought and searched after his beloved, it is the beloved himself, who now is calling his lovers, and is inviting them to attain his presence. And also, seize ye this grace, and account not this bounty as of little worth. Baha'u'llah says, the purpose of God in creating man hath been, and will ever be, to enable him to know his Creator and to attain his presence. Just imagine how many trillions of cells have to function in your body for you to be alive, and how many things have to be around you to stay alive. You don't have to think from the beginning of time. Just imagine the solar system came about 4.5 billion years ago for us to be here and have consciousness to explore and learn. That by itself is a miracle, and shows the extent of love from God. So it is all about love and the relationship with God, which in a big part happens through what we call the manifestation of God, or messenger of God, or prophet. In brief, according to Abdul Baha, the manifestation of God has 3 stations: The physical station, the human and bodily nature. The station of the rational soul, the individual human reality and spiritual identity. The station of divine manifestation, the perfect reflection and expression of God's attributes and will to humanity. The first two are associated with the human condition, while the third is the divine station, through which the manifestation reveals God's will and teachings to the world. Now, since God is unknowable, the question comes up, how do we relate to him? The easiest way to portray this is through a short explanation of the greatest name symbol. You can search for extended meanings of it if you wish. The top line is the world of God. The middle line is the world of the manifestation of God. The bottom line is the world of creation, which is us. The vertical line is the world of the manifestation of God, who is connecting us to the world of God. This is a very deep concept that has to be studied extensively, and it was very much yearned for by many philosophers, especially what we call Arefs, and their journey was called Irfan, or the quest to know God. The Baha'i faith sheds a lot of light on this issue. The Baha'i writings explain that God's essence is ultimately unknowable, but that human beings can know God through his manifestations, his attributes, his creation, and the spiritual capacities he has given us. Through the manifestations of God. This is the central means of knowing God. Baha'u'llah explains that although God himself is beyond human comprehension, God reveals himself through his manifestations, such as Abraham, Moses, Krishna, Buddha, Christ, Muhammad, the Bab, and Baha'u'llah. He hath known God who hath known himself. And Baha'u'llah explains that the manifestations are like a perfect mirror, reflecting the attributes of God. Thus, to know the manifestation is to know God as far as is possible for a human being. Through the attributes of God. We cannot comprehend God's essence, but we can recognize his attributes, such as love, justice, mercy, wisdom, power, and knowledge, through their manifestations. Abdul-Baha explains that just as we cannot directly see the sun, but can know it through its light and warmth, we know God through his attributes and their effects. Through creation, the universe itself is a sign of God. Baha'u'llah repeatedly describes creation as revealing the signs and attributes of God. However, creation does not mean that God is identical with creation. Rather, creation points toward its creator, through self-knowledge. The famous Baha'i principle, he hath known God who hath known himself, connects knowledge of oneself with knowledge of God. Human beings possess spiritual qualities that reflect divine attributes. By discovering the higher nature of the self, love, truthfulness, justice, compassion, and knowledge, we gain a greater understanding of the attributes of God. Through prayer and spiritual experience, prayer, meditation, remembrance of God, and turning the heart toward him are also means of drawing nearer to God. But the Baha'i writings distinguish between knowing God spiritually and comprehending God's essence intellectually. We can draw near to God spiritually without ever being able to encompass his essence. Through the Word of God. Another particularly important means is the revealed Word of God. The words revealed by the manifestation transform the human soul and enable us to recognize divine truth. Baha'u'llah writes in the Kitab-i-Khan that the knowledge of God is associated with recognizing his manifestation and responding to his revelation. Sometimes we read some passages from the scriptures of different religions that look contradictory or confusing, as the messengers of God refer to themselves as having different stations, and this could be seen in all the dispensations. Let's see what Jesus says. In one place he says that he would come back, by which he is referring to his essence, which is one and eternal, just like the sun, which is one and returns to us every day. In another he says, I will go and someone else will come back. Here he is referring to the human and physical being of the manifestation of God. That will return, but in another body and name, and of course another time. He also says the Lord himself will come. Here he is referring to himself as the purest being who is reflecting God in himself, like a pure and polished mirror that is reflecting the light of the sun. The sun has not come down to the mirror, but yet we can see the sun in the mirror. So they all refer to the same event. Likewise, in some answered questions, Abdul-Baha explains the symbolic meaning of the reed, mentioned in Revelation 11:1, there was given me a reed like unto a rod. He clarifies that the reed represents the perfect man, the manifestation of God. Just as a reed is hollowed out when its inner pith is removed, a holy and sanctified heart is entirely emptied of selfish attachments and worldly desires. Because the reed is hollow, the music does not originate from the reed itself, but from the flute player blowing through it. Similarly, the words of the manifestation come from divine revelation rather than human ego. Likewise, we read a hadith from Muhammad that we have states with God. In some of them, He is us and we are Him, and in another, He is He and we are we. This concept can be seen in Baha'u'llah's writings. He is referring to Himself as the prisoner. There is no God but this prisoner. This is the station of profound humility and submission of these exalted manifestations. Not that the essence of God is one with their person. Just remember that the manifestation of God has always existed and will always exist. Their way of communication to us is because of our limitations and not theirs. A little note: as the world of God and manifestation of God are above us, so is their communication. So if they express their communication as receiving the message from a dove, burning bush, a spirit, an angel, at certain point in certain places, does not mean that they didn't know their station, and all of a sudden they received the message. This is all relative to us and the way we understand. Now let's look at some concepts and ways to achieve world peace and the unity of mankind. The oneness of God, the oneness of religion, the oneness of humanity, the elimination of all forms of prejudice, equality of men and women, the harmony of science and religion, independent investigation of truth, universal compulsory education, a universal auxiliary language, universal peace and a universal tribunal, spiritualization of economic life, and the elimination of the extremes of wealth and poverty, establishment of a new world order, world government. We all can relate to the oneness of God. We can describe the oneness of religion simply as a school with different grades, each one advancing us toward our goal. The first grade is great, and we love and cherish our class and our teacher, but that should not stop us from moving forward and going to the next grade. We should not attach ourselves to the past grades and teachers, as the purpose of the previous grade was to make us ready for the next one. We do know that because of the oneness of the manifestations of God, any of them could have revealed what the future manifestation would reveal. However, humanity was not ready for it at that time. We call it progressive revelation, and we know these as different religions revealed at different times for humanity. The oneness of humanity is the core teaching of Baha'u'llah, and many of his teachings are elements necessary to achieve that, such as the elimination of all forms of prejudice. Prejudice causes hatred and division, and that is exactly the opposite of the way to unity. Achieving unity has to come from our hearts, although it is good to train our minds as well. A lot of these changes and acts have to affect the heart and then be practiced on the social level. Just like equality of men and women, it is such an important aspect of our society and life that it has to be practiced in a loving manner until it becomes a part of us. So normal that we see people and not genders. Baha'u'llah states, "Women and men have been and will always be equal in the sight of God." Abdul-Baha states, "The world of humanity has two wings. One is women and the other men. Not until both wings are equally developed can the bird fly." The difference between us and animals is that we have a rational mind, and in order to utilize it in the best way, it needs to be educated and nourished. The Baha'i faith places a special emphasis on educating people from an early age so we maximize our ability to impact our world and serve humanity. Education is in all forms, including spiritual education and experiences. Baha'u'llah states, "The idea is that human beings possess extraordinary potential, but education is necessary to bring those capacities into reality. Baha'i education is therefore not limited to academic learning. It includes developing useful abilities, character, and a sense of service." Abdul-Baha explains that there are three kinds of education: material education, the development of the physical body and practical abilities; human education, the development of intellectual and social capacities; spiritual education, the development of spiritual qualities and virtues. The source of religion is God, and the source of science is God, so they must be in harmony. Abdu'l-Baha tells us, religion must be in accord with science and reason. If it does not agree with science and reason, it is superstition. Religion and science are the two wings upon which man's intellect can soar to the heights with which the human soul can progress. Therefore, if we see them in conflict, either we do not have the right science or we do not understand the religion. For a long time, lack of communication or difficulty in communication has been a barrier to human progress and to understanding each other. Baha'u'llah prescribed choosing or inventing a universal auxiliary language so people can communicate with each other with ease. That is one big step toward unity. It is interesting that the Baha'i faith promotes unity in diversity so people do not have to become the same. Rather, they can keep their beautiful cultures, which have been developed throughout the ages. This is also true when learning the universal language, so people can learn and keep their mother tongue. Abdu'l-Baha says, the diversity in the human family should be the cause of love and harmony, as it is in music where different notes blend together in the production of a perfect chord. And also, consider the flowers of a garden. Though differing in kind, color, form, and shape, yet, inasmuch as they are refreshed by the waters of one spring, revived by the breath of one wind, invigorated by the rays of one sun, and are growing and flourishing under the care of one gardener, this diversity increaseth their charm, and addeth unto their beauty. Now, there wouldn't be any unity if there is no peace. Baha'is believe we will achieve world peace rather soon, and it is up to us how we do it. Baha'u'llah has laid the foundation with his teachings that we have studied some of so far. Baha'is worldwide have been working toward it and will continue working on it by spreading and promoting love and unity. It is up to us. Being a Baha'i is to serve humanity and create victory out of crisis. In order to achieve world peace, we have to look at each other as equals, as Baha'u'llah teaches us. Edward Granville Brown's famous encounter with Baha'u'llah took place at Baji, near Akka, in April 1890. Brown was a distinguished Cambridge Orientalist and one of the very few Western scholars to meet Baha'u'llah personally. He spent several days in the area and was granted multiple interviews with him. Brown's description of his first meeting is particularly famous. He wrote, "The face of him on whom I gazed I can never forget, though I cannot describe it. Those piercing eyes seemed to read one's very soul. Power and authority sat on that ample brow. No need to ask in whose presence I stood, as I bowed myself before one who is the object of a devotion and love which kings might envy and emperors sigh for in vain." He then recorded words Baha'u'llah spoke to him about the future of humanity. That all nations should become one in faith and all men as brothers, that the bonds of affection and unity between the sons of men should be strengthened, that diversity of religion should cease, and differences of race be annulled. What harm is there in this? And Baha'u'llah continued, "Yet so it shall be, these fruitless strifes, these ruinous wars shall pass away, and the most great peace shall come." Then came the remarkable statement, "Let not a man glory in this, that he loves his country. Let him rather glory in this, that he loves his kind." Poverty has long been a major concern, and many people and organizations have tried to eliminate it. Although there have been some improvements, the problem still exists in many societies. The Baha'i faith prescribes a spiritual solution to this problem. In fact, many problems in our earthly life have better earthly solutions when spirituality and human virtues are applied. Abdu'l-Baha says, "The right of every human being to the daily bread whereby they exist, or the equalization of the means of livelihood." He continues, "The arrangements of the circumstances of the people must be such that poverty shall disappear, that everyone, as far as possible according to his rank and position, shall share in comfort and well-being." So he is asking people to help one another, but we can also see that he is encouraging people to strive and move up in rank and position so that society will flourish. Baha'u'llah also tells us, "O ye rich ones on earth, the poor in your midst are my trust. Guard ye my trust, and be not intent only on your own ease." And he says, Tell the rich of the midnight sighing of the poor. The Baha'i faith is asking people of means to help others because they love humanity and not because they are forced to. Abdul Baha states, "The teachings of Baha'u'llah advocate voluntary sharing, and this is a greater thing than the equalization of wealth. This will not stop humanity from improving, as we all have different capacities." As he also says, difference of capacity in human individuals is fundamental. It is impossible for all to be alike, all to be equal, all to be wise. And this consideration for the poor is in addition to people paying their own fair share of taxes. World unity and world government. Being united and having the earth as our common residence requires a world body to govern it. We are still far from that concept, although some attempts have been made. After World War II, we established international bodies such as the United Nations, but these institutions have not yet become the kind of world governing body envisioned in the Baha'i writings. Baha'u'llah states, "The world is but one country, and mankind its citizens." Abdul Baha describes an international institution with authority to settle disputes between nations. A supreme tribunal shall be established by the peoples and governments of every nation. Shoghi Effendi gives a description of the future world political order. He writes that the unity of humanity implies the establishment of a world commonwealth, in which nations, races, religions, and classes are permanently united while the autonomy of the individual states and the freedom of individuals are safeguarded. Again, unity and diversity, independent investigation of truth. The Baha'i faith also believes in the independent investigation of truth. Every soul has to search for the truth, as the truth is one. Therefore, an individual is not considered a Baha'i, simply because he or she was born to Baha'i parents. He or she can choose to become a Baha'i after the age of 15. Abdul Baha states, "The first teaching of Baha'u'llah is the independent investigation of reality. And also, man must not blindly follow his ancestors and forefathers. So religious truth is not supposed to be inherited merely because one's family belongs to a particular religion. There is a very important condition to searching for the truth. In the Kitab-i-Iqan, Baha'u'llah describes the true seeker. He must so cleanse his heart that no remnant of love or hate for any one may remain. So our hate or love for something could be a major barrier to reaching reality. Heaven, hell, and our spiritual experience. Let's look at the concept of heaven and hell, the next world, and our spiritual experience. According to the Baha'i faith, our existence starts with conception, and we are blessed with an individual spirit which is non-material and everlasting, although our body has a limited time on earth. Therefore, we are not coming from another world, shape, or condition. We are born only once, and this is the only world where we have free will and can make a decision to do good or bad, and with that comes responsibility. We read how insignificant this earthly life is, and how quickly the time that we are here passes, and yet we are so attached to it. There are so many beautiful writings from Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha. In the Kitab-i-Iqan, Baha'u'llah writes, "The world is but a show, vain and empty, a mere nothing, bearing the semblance of reality. Set not your affections upon it." And, "The world is like the vapor in a desert, which the thirsty dreameth to be water and striveth after it with all his might. Also, live then the days of thy life, that are less than a fleeting moment." This has been my favorite. Fleeting are the riches of the world. All that perisheth and changeth is not, and hath never been, worthy of attention, except to a recognized measure. He does not disregard this earthly and material life, as our human side needs things in this world. There is a very important point here. As mentioned, this is the only world where we have free will, and therefore we are responsible for our actions. So, as unimportant as the material world is, our decision-making power is so very important that Baha'u'llah tells us, "Know thou that the worlds of God have neither beginning nor end, and have revolved and will continue to revolve around this world." This is huge. All the infinite worlds of God revolve around this world. Baha'u'llah writes, "The progress of man's spirit in the next world is limited only by the progress of his soul in this world." Abdul Baha explains that the child in the womb develops faculties, eyes, ears, hands, feet, and other organs, not because they are useful inside the womb, but because they are necessary for the next stage of existence. He gives the analogy essentially as follows. The reality of man is his soul, which is not of this world, and which is therefore not subject to its limitations. And he explains that just as the child develops the organs it will need after birth, the human soul must develop spiritual qualities during this life that it will need in the next world. As we die, and our bodies become a part of nature, it is our non-material essence, our spirit, that is eternal. So there could not be a physical place that we go to, therefore there could not be a physical heaven or hell. They are spiritual realities expressed through metaphors that direct us toward good deeds and bring us closer to our Creator. In the past, people did not have the capacity to understand many of the concepts that we are capable of understanding now. Therefore, they were given simple explanations, stories, and symbols. Let's look at some of the references to this. The book of Isaiah, specifically Isaiah 29-11. And the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed. The idea of a sealed book also appears prominently in the book of Daniel, where Daniel is told, But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words, and seal the book even to the time of the end. Daniel 12-4. And again, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Daniel 12-9. Baha'u'llah has come to unseal the books and explain what they meant. You can refer to Baha'u'llah's writings, especially the Kitab-i-Qian, to understand some of these symbols and metaphors. We also read Rahiq Maktum. This is a Quranic expression found in Surah Al-Mutaffifin. They will be given to drink of pure wine sealed. By the same analogy, Baha'u'llah has come to unseal the wine and give us the drink of understanding. Baha'u'llah explains, The nature of the soul after death is such that it can never be described in words, nor is it meet and permissible to reveal its whole character to the eyes of men. Abdul Baha explains very simply, Heaven is the nearness of God, and hell is remoteness from Him. I imagine that after death, our soul, which is non-material, breaks all the boundaries and limitations and becomes pure consciousness. Therefore it becomes the judge of what we have done. So what hell could be worse than judging ourselves, and understanding and feeling the pain we have caused? There is also God's mercy. So we are in good hands. The Baha'i administrative order. Time to look at Baha'i administration. The Baha'i faith has no clergy, and no wonder the clergy in Iran persecuted the believers from the beginning. They simply should have lost their position and their income. In fact, a lot of those who embraced the faith started a real job to earn their living. So the organization is set up in such a way that there is no individual who has absolute power. At a local level, the Baha'is elect 9 members when they have more than 9 Baha'is to run the affairs of their jurisdiction. It is called the local spiritual assembly. This happens every year in a spiritual manner, with no candidates or propaganda. The voting is secret, so even spouses would not know each other's vote. At a national level, there are also 9 members elected as the National Spiritual Assembly to run the affairs of the Baha'is for a year. At the international level, Baha'is elect 9 members every 5 years, called the Universal House of Justice. This body of 9 is the ultimate authority of the faith. As a child, I witnessed how the laws of old religions did not apply to today's world. Baha'u'llah did not reveal a lot of laws and stated that humans are mature enough not to be micromanaged. He referred whatever needs to be ruled or explained in the future to the Universal House of Justice. This was very refreshing for me, as we did not have to fall into the trap of the past. It is like an open-ended book. The world is moving so fast that a lot of new issues and questions would come up rapidly. As Baha'u'llah states, Inasmuch as for each day there is a new problem, and for every problem an expedient solution, such affairs should be referred to the ministers of the House of Justice, that they may act according to the needs and requirements of the time. Baha'u'llah gives us a very different perspective of understanding the laws, and why we should follow God's commandments. O people of the earth, know ye of a certainty that my commandments are the lamps of my loving providence amongst you, and the keys of my mercy for my creatures. Thus hath it been sent down from the heaven of the will of your Lord, the Lord of revelation. Were any man to taste the sweetness of the words which the lips of the All-Merciful have willed to utter, he would, though the treasures of the earth be in his possession, renounce them one and all, that he might vindicate the truth of even one of his commandments shining above the dayspring of his bountiful care. Think not that we have revealed unto you a mere code of laws. Nay, rather, we have unsealed the choice wine with the fingers of might and power. He also refers to unsealing the wine, or as we see here, unsealing the books as well. He also writes in the Kitab Aqdas, "Observe ye the commandments of God for love of his beauty," so loving and so different than scaring people from the consequences. Baha'is are blessed to have the bounty of teaching this beautiful and latest revelation of God. Not to get too deep in the history, it started with the conversation of the Bab and Manushir Khan, the governor of Isfahan. Later, after Manushir Khan had become deeply devoted to the Bab, he told him that God had given him enormous wealth and that he wanted to dedicate all of it to the advancement of the Bab's cause. He also intended to go to Tehran and try to persuade Muhammad Shah to accept the new faith. The Bab responded that although the governor's intention was noble, his life and the Bab's life were both nearing their end, and that God's cause would not be established through the means Manushir Khan envisioned. Rather, the Bab said, that the cause would be preserved through the sacrifices of the poor and humble. So the cause of God was not supposed to be established by wealth, armies, rulers, or kings, rather by regular people like us. So the early Baha'is pioneered to all corners of the world to teach the Baha'i faith, and the Baha'is still do. It was quite difficult to move to a faraway country with a language barrier starting 180 years ago. That shows the extent of love and sacrifice. Baha'i history, philosophy, teachings, and wirings are amazing. They are the proof of Baha'u'llah's mission. I refer you to Rumi, who says, "The sun is itself the evidence of the sun. If you seek a proof, turn not your face away from it." I want to finish this introduction with one of Baha'u'llah's amazing quotes. "So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth." We want to dedicate this video to the memory of our beloved, young, beautiful, good-hearted, and left-handed Jian, who dedicated his life to serving humanity and was a pure soul, even here on earth.